Good morning and Happy New Year. Welcome to It's How You'll Be Remembered, our first one of 2026. Glad you are here. If you are seeing us today, make sure that you say hello, chime in, hit the like buttons, put in a comment, because this is a very special show today. I have my good friend as a guest today, Eileen McDonald, on. Eileen, I am so glad that you are here. Happy New Year and welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Julie. Yes, Happy New Year. Starting 2026. I'm very excited for 2026. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty excited this new year.
Yeah, me too. I don't know what it is. It seems like everybody that I've talked to lately has always said, I was so glad 2025 was over. It was a terrible year. It was, glad it's over. But 2026, everybody seems to be really excited about.
Yeah, it's interesting how we think about things, right? Sometimes when things happen to us at the end of the year, that's all we remember is all of the struggles we've had. And sometimes we forget our successes that happened in the beginning of the year. So I think it's always a good time to reflect on the whole year and some of the positive things in there. And I think sometimes we always have a tendency of going towards the negative. So I think it's good for people to remember there's probably some positive things in there for them, and that can kind of get them maybe a mindset into 2026 with maybe a little more flow and optimism.
We talk about that a lot too, about taking time to celebrate your wins, even if they're small wins. Sometimes we have to celebrate getting out of bed. Like,
Absolutely.
I actually got up today, so I'm going to celebrate that. I'm going to tell myself good job. But then there are times too where it's like you have to just give yourself some grace. And that's where your expertise really comes in. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say we met networking.
Yes.
About what, 10 years ago or
At
more?
least, yeah, maybe more.
Yeah, it may have been longer than that. Because we were networking, and you and I'll never forget, we met at Starbucks. And I had no idea what you did, and you started explaining it to me, and I was fascinated by it, because at the time I did not know how important it was that we manage stress and that we take time to celebrate what we do, and that we give ourselves grace when we need it, that we have to listen to our body. And this is your expertise. Real quick. Oh, Janet is in the house. Hello, Janet. She says,
Hey,
hello.
Janet.
Excited to join live today. Eileen is a baddie. Janet, all three of us were networking together way back in the day.
Yes.
So glad that you are here. Thanks for chiming in today. It's so fun to watch you glow up, as we say.
Happy New Year, Janet.
Yeah, Happy New Year. So, and she just had a birthday too.
Yes.
But tell us a little bit about what you do, because it's fascinating, and tell us how you got into it, because your story is incredible.
Oh, well, thanks, Julie. So, it's so interesting how life just kind of unfolds sometimes. And so my background is nursing. I was a nurse in a critical care unit for many years, and I wound up having a health issue that kind of took me out of the game for a while. And I really wanted to find out what I can do to support myself. I developed an autoimmune disease, and I really started to understand that stress and this body is the way that the body responds to stress really has an impact on that. And so I took that and became a coach and really helping women. I worked with executives for many years on stress management, really getting them to understand how to use stress to get them to move forward, but also to identify times in their lives when stress is actually going to take them off their game, because we need a little bit of stress, right? Stress isn't all bad, but we do have to start to identify when we start to come over that edge, right? There's a peak performance that we stay in the middle, and then all of a sudden we start to go down at the end, and it takes us off our game. So I learned and trained with many neuropsychologists and really understanding the physiology of the body. And so that really is what I really am passionate about, is really having people take control of their lives, understand that they can be responsible for and navigate their stress in a healthy way.
Yeah. You said you developed an autoimmune disease, and I
Mm-hmm.
think I'm seeing a lot of that now. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people are having autoimmune disease, and we don't really realize that it could be caused by stress.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we all need to know about. Janet says, yes, 10 years of friendship and collaboration. Isn't that the truth?
Absolutely, yes.
You're
I've
great.
I've got to speak at Janet's. She has retreats, and she used to have retreats. I think she's going to put that
Start
back
again.
on the
Yeah.
So yes, I've had the pleasure of doing that. So that's been awesome.
Yeah,
But
it
yes,
has been. Yeah.
and for me, that's what it was. That was 30 years ago. I was developed autoimmune disease. We really didn't talk much about stress back then, but it was definitely one of the areas where I really took a deep dive really into, because I wanted to know why I developed this, right? I was a healthy person, mom of 3 little ones, working full time, marriage, friendships, all of those things. What happened to me? And it really is that, you push yourself, and you think that, that pushing and pushing and pushing to get those days, to be complete, right? To start early and just keep going, not realizing that there needs to be a reset for us. We need to be able to pause and reset, because what I wound up having was a form of burnout, which turned into the autoimmune disease.
Yeah. And that's true, because, stress, and we were talking about this in the green room right before we went live. Stress is actually your body's response to life's
Mhm.
challenges
Yes.
and things. And so it is designed to protect us. It's supposed to be short term. It's fight or flight, right?
Yes.
It's make the decision, and then it's designed to be short term and to protect us. But when we get into chronic stress, and that is the long-term effects, that's when we start to see things are manifesting in our body that shouldn't be there, right? That
Yes.
the illnesses come in. Janet is also giving you kudos. Your breath work tips and tricks are part of her daily practice.
Oh, thanks, Janet. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I'm a big fan of really people understanding. And one of the tools is really breath work, and I do it with a different take, but it's really understanding your relationship with the breath. And that's one of the things when we get stressed and overwhelmed, right? Yes, Julie, I'm glad you said that stress is short. It's there to really as a tool for us to be able to make those deadlines, to be able to, what are those people who pick up the cars when, somebody's underneath it or something, you want that adrenaline, you want that cortisol, you want those hormones, and they're meant to be short-lived. And I think in the world we live today and the pressure we put on ourselves, I think men and women, I'm going to, really focus on women, really put the pressure on themselves, and we stay in that chronic fight or flight. And what happens is we don't even realize it, because we slide into it very, very slowly. And before we know it, that becomes our norm, but not our natural state of being. And for people that are feeling, we talked in the green room before, right? What are the signs? Is it sleeplessness? Like people don't sleep at night? Are they craving foods that aren't healthy for them anymore? Are they being more irritable, right? Are they just difficult to get along with? All of these things we don't realize that really creep into our lives, and we don't see it. Some people might bring it to our attention, and then we get defensive. So what is really, that happens a lot, no, I'm not angry. My
Yeah.
voice is just really stern. I'm not
Yeah.
angry.
I'm just under a lot of stress.
I'm under a lot of stress. And so we start to slip into that, and that becomes our normal state of being. And then we start to realize I'm not happy. I'm not finding joy in my life anymore. My relationships are struggling. And we don't realize that it's that accumulation of the stress hormones being flooded through our systems over a period of time.
Yeah. I think that's so important that we're tuned into that, because I think especially young moms out there who are doing it all. You've got the career, you've got the kids, you've got the house, you've got, all the things. You've got to get everybody up, get every breakfast fed, lunches packed, whatever, get them off to school or daycare or whatever. And then you've got to go to work. You've got to do a good job. You've got to come home. There's after school activities, there's work, and work at home, because then that never ends. And I think that moms really do get into the burnout mode
Mhm.
quickly, because it's like, I need help. Like,
Mhm.
and sometimes your spouse is helpful, and sometimes your spouse, like, I don't know what you need. Like, just
Yes.
tell me, because sometimes they're not in tune to, or maybe it doesn't bother them that the laundry is not done, or they're not thinking about it. And so unless there is communication and a way to resolve that issue, we struggle a lot with stress. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, Janet even says, right, we're on that low fuel in
Fuel.
the car. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's a reminder that we need to refuel. It's exactly right.
Yeah.
And I think what happens, I know that happened to me, right? I wanted everything to be perfect. I was in I did not have progress over perfection back then. It was just perfection. Being a critical care nurse, I worked in pediatric intensive care. I couldn't make mistakes. I mean, that is, whether I went into that field because that's my perfectionism, or I'm a recovering perfectionist, I tell people. But it's really important to know that, when we put that pressure on ourselves, that everything has to be a certain way, and it really wears us down. And, sometimes when our spouses or significant others, um, they don't know what we need, but we don't know what we need because we haven't paused, we haven't reflected, we haven't given ourselves any time to really understand what is going on. And I think that's really important for all of us to remember, is that that's what we have to do sometimes. We have to slow down to speed up. I've been
Yeah.
saying that for 20 years, and people go, "What?" I said, we have to slow down just a little to reset ourselves, realign ourselves, and then we can get a perspective. But when we stay in that activated state, I call it, we can call it fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, whatever that is. That's our body's response when we stay in that. And if we don't start to be able to access the part of the brain, that calm, cool, and collective brain, to really be able to identify what is working, what's not working, really get that perspective. And that's why pausing is so important. It just sounds like it's a simple thing, but to pause and really be able to be in the moment, right? Be in the present moment. I think many of us are anticipating what we need to do in the future and what that looks like, and then we're rehashing the past. And so, how do we stay in the present moment to be able to be grounded? I had a business partner for many years, and she used to say to our clients, "Are your feet and your head in the same place?" Like, and she, we would say, "Put your feet down and put your hand on your head. Are you here? Where are you?" And sometimes that's really a challenge. I mean, it's something that we have to practice because
Yeah.
it doesn't come naturally to us.
Oh my
Because
gosh, no. And it goes back to, unhealthy eating habits, inability to sleep, weight gain or loss, lack of motivation, feeling of overwhelm, brain fog. It's not that you're not motivated to do the
Mhm.
laundry, or you're not motivated to get the dinner done. You'd rather just go grab something quickly. It's that you need the pause, and you're trying to do something to lighten your load. You don't realize that all of it is really the way that you're struggling is affecting your body. I mean, I work part-time at a women's clothing store, and I get great discounts. And so I love shopping there. So I went to work there right before the holidays. And what I found is that just about every time I'm working, somebody comes in and goes, "Oh my gosh, I have just recently gained so much weight around my midsection.
Mhm.
I don't know what's happened. I've never had a belly." And I'm like, and they're like, "It's menopause. It's menopause." I don't know that it's always menopause. I
Mhm.
wonder if it's stress, because that has a direct impact, all those hormones, because your body holds all of that, right?
Mhm. Yes.
And so what does that look like when you start to see, "Oh my gosh, I've never had a belly, and all of a sudden I've got one."
Yeah. And that takes women off their game pretty quickly. It's like it starts to wear away at their self-confidence. It starts to wear away at just their self and their self-worth. And so, yes, it could be a hormone. We menopause has a lot of different aspects to it, a lot of different ways that we can navigate that. It is hormonal. But when we think about hormones and stress, when the stress hormones are constantly being released, that cortisol and adrenaline, it really does play a role in how the estrogen and, progesterone, all the hormones in our body actually are navigating and managing. And so we think of a cell, right? We think of this healthy cell. But what happens with stress a lot of times, and this is just this is a very 101, a very basic way of explaining it, but it does help people when I explain it this way. That cell gets protective, so it gets a little bit hard on the outside, so it has trouble for nutrients going in and toxins going out, and so that plays a role with hormones. And so I think for people, women particularly, that is one of the things they need to evaluate is what is stress for them, right? What is, and I think with the word stress, we got so used to using it. I hear it with my clients all the time. I'm so stressed out. I've been stressed out for the last month or 3 months or 6 months. And what happens with that is that, one, we're mentally telling ourselves where we're at, and we can't give ourselves the space to really start to get curious and identify at what areas in life. Because I think it's gotten to a point where everything's at 10 on the stress scale, whether it's traffic, whether it's a death of, a loved one, whether it's like all of these things, our body responds like it's a 10. So we have to start looking and really, I always say that's something, what I work with people is, let's figure out the stresses. But what I want people to also know is that our stress has a cycle. And that when our body, the stress cycle is there for us to succeed in life, is to keep us healthy and motivated, activated, all of those things. And what happens is we don't allow the stress cycle to end. We stay in the stress cycle. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes.
So, and the stress cycle needs to have, it's a cycle. We need it, and then, it wears off. And women particularly stay in that. And like I say, men do too, but women particularly stay in that. And so I really want people to realize there are things that we can do that can help us really get out of that stress cycle in that moment. And when Julie, you and I talked about, I always say, stress isn't always in our head. We can't figure out and problem solve. And we need to connect with the body because it's physiologic. And so the stress hormones are all over our body. Yeah. And one of the things that I think is so important, and we hear it, but I don't think we understand the impact, or many people that I work with do not understand the impact, is movement of the body. We have to move those hormones out of the body somehow. And some people, really resist exercise, and that's fine. If I'm not going to tell people what they need to do, but one of the things that I think is really important is movement, whether it's going home and dancing it out, whether it's shaking it off, like, what's her name? Taylor Swift, right? We literally, like, it is truly shaking your body. When animals, if you ever watch National Geographic, and they're getting, the tiger is chasing the, whatever it is, the gazelle or whatever animal at the time. The one thing they do when they get away, and hopefully they get away, but when they get away is they shake and shake and shake. And what they do is they're resetting their nervous system. And us as humans don't know how to do that. We don't know how to reset the nervous system. And I know there's a lot in the last 4 or 5 years really on, social media about, vagus nerve and nervous system regulation. And so I'm glad that it is going up. A lot of stuff out there is not always, probably the best information, but make sure you get the information from qualified people for that. I'll just my little 101. But really, it truly is that we need to reset that, and we need to go through that stress cycle and get rid of those stress hormones, because guess what? The next day, we're going to have the same stressors. And it's not the big stresses that take us off our game. It's the daily annoyances that we keep is every single day, whether it's coworkers, whether it's, kids being sick, whatever that is. That's what raises those stress levels for that we are not navigating in a healthy way.
Right. Oh gosh, there's so much to unpack here. Like,
Sorry.
No, it's so good. Janet added that yes, stress amplifies peri and menopause. else. I mean, it really does.
Mhm.
Because we don't know what's going on with our bodies. And so now we've got all this life happening. And, you know, and like you said, everything happens. Um, we make it a 10. Like it's just, oh my gosh, the world is ending, you know. And so because we take on the weight of the world, you know,
Yes.
and so I love Mel Robbins' book, Let Them, because what it says is you can't control everybody. So stop trying, stop taking on their problems. You worry about you and let them be them, right?
I think that's a great, yeah, it is. It's about, there's a couple things in there that one, I have people write their circles of what's in their control and then out of circle what's
Yes.
not in their
What's
control,
not? Yes.
because they really need to identify that. And
Mhm.
part of taking care of people and wanting to do what you said, that's a stress response. That's a fawn stress
Oh, yeah.
response
Oh, yes, it is.
that we need
It's a big
to make sure that
personality.
everybody's happy. That's, you know, so we've learned that some way, you know, it's for some people, not all, I mean, but for many of us, we've learned that. And so I think what we need to do is really do an inventory for ourselves. What can we control? What is that in our circle? And how do we identify when we're slipping into the areas that we can't control? We need
Exactly.
to have a buffer in there. We need
Yeah.
to ask ourselves questions. Is this something, I'm going to lose her name right now, and that's terrible, but I'll get it in a second. There's 4 questions to ask yourself. And it is, oh my goodness, I've just lost my train of thought. But is this, you know, what would be my life if I have, if this is true, if this is absolutely true in my life, what would that look like? What would that feel like? And what if it's not true? What would that look like and feel like?
Yeah.
And
Because we tell stories in our
we
head.
tell stories in our head, and that keeps the stress response activated. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And
Because
I'll
we
think
start
of her
to
name and I'll
believe
put it.
our own story.
But it's not Brene Brown, but it's Byron Katie. If anyone's not familiar with Byron Katie, I
I'm
would
not.
really have you. Oh yeah. So she always she talks about, you know, questioning ourselves. Is this true? So is this true? Is this in my control?
Mhm.
If it's not in my control, then I need to let it go. If it is in my control, then what is my next step in order to navigate this?
And Eileen, I think this is where we get bogged down,
Mhm.
because is this in my control? And if it is, what do I need to do about it? And sometimes what you need to do about it is the hard thing that causes
Yes.
us to panic
Yes.
and go, oh no, I think I know what to do about this, but I don't want to do this. You
No.
know, it's not something we want to do. And that's
Mhm.
where I think we get into, like, we get a job, you know, where, you know, we hate getting up in the mornings because we hate going to work
Mhm.
because we have toxicity in work or
Yes.
whatever. And so the story in our head is everybody hates me, or, you know, I hate working there or whatever. And then we go in there, we start to make it all happen because that, you know, we start to act on the thoughts, right? And so then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But sometimes if it is true, if we go, okay, is this true? Did this happen? Did this happen? And we evaluate that it's true. So what do I need to do? Well, the best thing for me would be to find another job. And
Mhm.
people go, oh, but I've been here 20 years. But,
Yes.
you know, I don't want to leave this job, you know, or you know, I've got to go have a conversation that I don't want to have. Um,
You know, and it's so that is so true, right? When we have a conversation we don't want to have, we have, and so we stay, because I think what we've learned over time is that being in that uncomfortable state, we feel more stressed out. So
yeah.
how can we get comfortable being uncomfortable?
Yes, yes. And how can
Right.
you learn that the fear of the conversation is probably worse than the conversation itself?
It's always that way. You know, I have heard that for many, many
Yeah.
years. You know, like I said before, I've worked with executives in stress management for many years, and that was one of their, you know, their things. They would come in and say it wasn't so much the work environment, but it was their clients. Their clients are challenging, you know, and I can't quit my client. I mean, when they're, you know, in corporate world, and
Yeah.
so we can as coaches, I think sometimes, but we
Yeah.
don't. But when you're in the corporate world and
Yeah,
it's
it's
not
a
your
little bit more
business, you can't.
difficult.
Yes. And so how do you navigate those
Mhm.
situations? And this is where I say is that we have to take control of the only thing we have control over is our response. That's really it.
Yeah.
And so once we start to realize that we don't have control over other people and the way they, and if we can drop the judgment, which is a really hard thing to do,
Yeah.
but if we can just challenge the judgment and say, this is the way they're handling things. What can I do to support my own self, but to also make that relationship work a little bit better? And maybe it is, I think what we need to give ourselves grace. You said that earlier. Say, you know what? Yes, acknowledge the feelings that we're feeling. That's perfectly fine. I think many times we shove those feelings down and then they bubble up and they come out in other areas of life.
Well, yeah, because then it just all it's just festering.
Yes.
And then eventually it's like a volcano. It's like, and then you start burning bridges down. You start doing things you don't want to do because you can't control it, because you got to release it.
Right. But there are situations that we can't control, but we're in them, whether that's a work environment, a family environment, whatever that is. And so how can we start to notice when our body's starting to get agitated?
Yeah.
What happens? We feel bracing happens. You can feel the tension in your body. So at that moment, when you're feeling that, what can you do? You roll your shoulders up, roll them back. You shake out your arms. You go for a walk. Whatever you can do in that moment, but you have control of that moment. Janet mentioned breathing. Breathing is one of the big things for me because we change our breath. Our breathing is a behavior. And so we change our breathing depending on the relationship and the conversations we're having. And so find ourselves, are we holding our breath? When we hold our breath, it's sending our brain a signal. We go into stress mode, and so we will overreact to things. So really allowing ourselves to know our body's response to that muscle tension, breathing. Some people can feel their heart rate, other people can't. They don't have that perception to do that. But it's really connecting with the body and moving the body, going for a walk. Meditation sometimes works, but sometimes when you're in that state, it doesn't. Right? You can't think that. It's right. Sometimes it's patting, sometimes giving yourself just a little bit of a pat just to shift things and move the energy through the body, because emotions are energy in motion, right? So we need to move those emotions through us, and I think that's really important.
Gosh, Janet says making a tough decision is usually the key to getting unstuck.
Yes.
So how do we make those tough decisions?
Yeah.
Gosh.
It's hard to make those tough decisions when you're in a stressed state.
Yeah.
So you have to shift out of that, because what happens is we're going to get our intuitive hits, or people get, my gut feeling. But if you're in a stressed out state, the choices that you're usually making, what you're feeling is more impulsive than it is being able to really think about it in a logical way. We have to access that calm, cool, and collective aspect of our brain and be able to be in more of a centered state in order to make those hard choices. But, getting unstuck is so important. And it is tough decisions. We have to be uncomfortable, right, Janet? It's like you have to put yourself, make uncomfortable and get curious with being uncomfortable and notice that over the bridge or over that next step is really, really where you want to be, and how can you get there? And that helps you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I could talk to you all day. It is already time.
Oh my goodness.
It goes so fast. But this conversation is one that I think is much needed. And January is a perfect time to do that, to think, how can I get de-stressed, unstressed? How can I manage stress for 2026 so that I can be more productive? And so I want you to know, if you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, come to C-Suite Synergy this Thursday, January the 8th, from 12 to 1:30 at Firebird's Wood-Fired Grill in Plano. Eileen will be our speaker. We're going to dive deeper into this. We're going to find out what you can do to manage your stress, how you can recognize it. We'll have some exercises to do there. So we're going to spend more time on self-care and stress so that we can all be healthier, because we know that the first step to success and having the life that you want, that's full of joy and happiness, is making sure that you are physically okay, emotionally, mentally okay. You have to start with you. before anything else falls into place. And so Eileen will be there this Thursday. So if you're interested, I'll put the link to register in the comments below. So make sure that you're there January the 8th. That's this Thursday. That's day after tomorrow.
Yeah, Travanti just popped on. Getting out of my own way in 2026.
Great. Travanti, I'm so glad you're here. Janet has also said that she went on vacation and had clarity like that, just getting away, doing something different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have clarity. Sometimes that's what you need. Germonte says, getting out of my own way. And then Janet also says she will be there Thursday.
Yay.
So glad. Yes, because we have limited seating, so it's not open. So you do need to let us know that you're going to be there, and the link to register will be in the comments. So Eileen,
Perfect.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
Julie, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this is such an important topic. We need to put ourselves first in 2026. And I'll be leaning on you this year for sure.
Alrighty.
Because going through a lot of stress, coming out of it is like, okay, now my central nervous system is better now. So now I can move forward. But how do we do that? So This is all important stuff. So thank you so much. And I hope to see you on January 8th at Firebird's Wood Fired Grill. And Eileen, will you come back sometime and visit?
Oh, anytime. Yeah, anytime.
I love that. Yes. Well, we look forward to seeing you on Thursday, and we'll be back. No, we will not be here next Tuesday. I'll be traveling, but we will be here the week after. So we will see you soon. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much.